call to order our work session today for the Angel Fund. We'll begin by going around and introducing ourselves, starting with Ms. Tucker.
Julia Tucker, Assembly Council.
Adam Chombley.
Ernie Hall, Assembly.
Amy Demboski.
Tim Steele.
Training. Amy, what were you looking for up there?
I have no idea.
Elvie Gray
Hello,
Jackson. I just looked up Elvie Gray Jackson.
Lucinda Mahoney, CFO.
Joe Morrison, Program Manager.
Ms. Mahoney, the floor is yours, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about this.
Well, we are very, very pleased to provide a report on this. This is one of the more exciting things I feel like that we get to do here at City Hall in terms of supporting small businesses and startups in our community. So our objective today is just to provide a status, but before we go into the status, because some members are new on the Assembly from the point in time that we received these funds, so we thought we'd just provide a really quick overview of the program, and then we'll go into what we've done with it. But for those of you who are new, Amy and Tim, we received a $13.2 million allocation from Federal Treasury to the City of Anchorage. We were the first city to get this, and we actually received the highest per capita allocation in the nation. So we're really, really proud of that. And the objective to using this allocation is to distribute money to small businesses and startups in the City of Anchorage in a venture capital type medium. Meaning we take equity positions in startup companies with the intent on, one, enabling the startup company to start, and two, hoping that that startup company will create jobs in our city and then multiply the dollars that would stimulate through our economy through its growth on a 10-to-1 leveraged ratio. So our goal too was to focus on disadvantaged businesses as well as startups and mid-expansion capital. I'll go into a little bit of that. As you see on the best fit applicant chart, what we're presenting here is a typical continuum that you would see typically in a company. You know, it starts out, it's friends and families that fund your ideas, then you find angel investors, then you can, as you grow and you develop your model, then you move into venture capital funds. Later on, when you have enough stability in your financials, you can then get bank debt and rated debt, etc. Well, our focus is in the box. This is where we are targeting because this is the objective of the fund, and this is where we felt in the City of Anchorage that small businesses and startups needed the most amount of help. And the reason for this is because there really is not a structured venture capital program really in our state at all. We are one of the only states that does not have that. And so part of our goal is to get that going and have these funds to be a catalyst so that that funding is sustainable beyond the life of these monies. And so that's really the long-term goal for this program. So in regard to our specific strategy, you go to the next slide, you can see we received $13.2 million. Of that, $482,000 is for overhead. And that's to pay Joe's salary and some of the conferences, and we would put on a lot of outreach programs to get folks, one, to understand startups that were here and were available, and two, to meet with potential angel and venture capital folks so that they can invest in some of our funds, because that's what enables the sustainability. So there's a significant education process that we're doing in our community to make this happen. Our goal at the very beginning was to invest 2/3 of the $12.7 million in funds, because we want the funds to outlast us, and then 1/3 in small business. And as we've gone through and we have a little bit more experience behind us now, the target is higher in terms of the fund side of it, because as we've learned and started going through the process, it takes just as much due diligence and efforts on Joe's part to evaluate a $100,000 direct investment as it does a $2 million fund investment. And so from an overhead and efficiency of the program perspective, that's one thing that we've learned and we're adjusting going forward. So the next slide just is a really high overview of how the process works. Folks apply online. We've had two enrollment processes, and I'll give you the stats of that here in a minute. Joe goes through and he does an initial review. He makes sure that they've provided adequate business plans, that they've provided financial statements that make sense. Also, what we did was as a kind of control to have them provide a little seminar for small businesses. So small businesses went to a conference seminar that McCunda put on to teach them about how to set up a balance sheet, how to set up an income statement, the importance of cash flow. We also put on seminars, if you will, for small businesses to come in and understand the importance of the components of business plans. We worked with the small business development corporation to collaborate together to make sure that we can refer small businesses. For example, if they don't pass this initial screen, we can send them to that organization so that they can help them improve their business plans. So we've done a lot of community outreach to make the program very visible and to position these startups for success. And that is really our goal. Once they go through that step 2 initial screen, then it goes to our advisory committee. And folks present to the advisory committee their idea. The advisory committee questions them, vets them. There's a formal objective scoring process. And then the advisory committee prioritizes who they believe should receive awards. And then they submit that to the mayor and myself, and we would make the final decision. And then after we decide, then Joe comes into action and does all his due diligence. And we are very, very detailed in regard to the due diligence because I view us as the fiduciaries of this funding. And I want to make sure that we crossed our I's, or dotted our I's, crossed all of our T's, and that we're making the best decisions possible in regard to the disbursement of the funds. When the startups or the funds can show that they've got the one-to-one match and that they've met their commitments in regard to having a lot of criteria in place in regard to the checklist that we have, we do final approval and disbursement. So there's a big process that we have to essentially build from scratch to make this happen. So effective to date, I've indicated we had 2 open processes, and in that process we received 38 applications, 5 of which were funds and 33 were actual businesses, and we had $30 million in requests. And this was so great to see this number because one of the challenges in regard to receiving this funding to begin with in terms of working with the Federal Treasury Department was they were concerned that we wouldn't even have the deal flow come to us. They're like, are there really these startups in Anchorage that will even apply for this? And as you can see, we've had $30 million come to us in regard to asks. So that's a really important message because it says there really is a strong entrepreneurial spirit in our city. There are a lot of startups that are looking for investment support, and we do really have an opportunity to be like a Silicon Valley. The committee, through their process, has made awards or recommendations, if you will, of $10 million. And $2 million of that has actually closed, meaning Joe went through all the due diligence, all of the contracts, the legal aspect of it, do you have a CEO in place, who's your marketing director? I mean, we are going into that level of due diligence. Do you have your one-to-one match? Is it in the bank? And so we've awarded the $2 million, one to a fund, which is the Anchorage Opportunity Fund, and the other to Call Doctor, which is a direct investment. And then we have $8 million that's in the queue that Joe is working on in regard to due diligence. So because we are taking an equity position in companies, that means our contracts have to be very, very well done. So we did hire K&L Gates out of Seattle to help us. They gave us a template, a legal template that we can use to work with both funds and small businesses where all of the terms and the conditions are laid out. And it's been very beneficial, to have them leading us in this way. They have a division within their law firm that focuses just on venture capital contracts. So they were able to take templates off their computers and apply them here. And we've been really managing those fees as low as possible, but that is one of the consumers, if you will, of the $482,000 in overhead. So what this next chart depicts is, if you remember, I had said that there's a business continuum for an organization, friends and family, angels, VC, etc. And as we were envisioning the program, we were hoping that we could place money in every spot along that box, because that way all small businesses, depending on where they were in their growth, had an opportunity to either invest with us directly or invest in a fund. And so what this shows is pretty much that we've been able to attain that goal and award money to funds that are in various spots along that business continuum. Now, in regard to the awards that we've made, the Anchorage Opportunity Fund, you can see that it's in the top right box. And what that fund's objective goals are is more oriented towards expansion capital. And so it's not as risky as, say, some of the other funds that we've awarded to that are clearly like a startup fund or an accelerator fund. And so from our perspective, from a portfolio management view, it's really good to have that, because this fund will, while it is likely to take on less risk, there's probably a more stable return. Whereas these other funds, more to the left of the box, obviously a lot higher risk, and maybe 1 in 10 will have a solid return, but it might be a grand slam home run. Whereas in the Anchorage Opportunity Fund, I am very the likelihood of a return here is very high, but it's a little bit lower and it's more steady. And so that's how we've tried to position each of these. And so now I'll just talk to you a little bit about what our awards are. As I said, the Anchorage Opportunity Fund is more mid capital and more expansion, but they still meet the criteria of job growth in the city of Anchorage, and they are a small business, and only small businesses can receive these funds. We've also awarded to UAA Seawolf Fund, and their goal and objective is to set up a program where a lot of the professors and the universities, when they have ideas and they patented it, many times they patent ideas, and they have a great idea, but they just don't have any capital to make it happen. And so this fund will be oriented towards that. There's another fund, it's an accelerator fund where startups, this is just pure startups that are in very, very early stage. We will direct businesses directly to that fund, and that's being managed by a manager who's been doing startup funds for a long time, so he has a lot of experience. And then we have another fund that we awarded to out of Fairbanks, and the UAF Fairbanks fund is similar to the UAA Seawolf Fund, but it's more oriented towards science and technology. Is that a fair way to define that?
Yeah, so what's on the left that says IPC fund, that's really related to kind of technology first with the right commercial potential to fulfill that technology, whereas some of the other funds are more kind of business concept first.
So I've talked quite a bit here to give you background on where we are, and why don't I just stop and ask you guys questions.
Mr. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure everybody realizes this, but I just want to reiterate that these aren't grants, they're loans. And I guess my question to you, Mr. and thank you both of you for this presentation. This is a wonderful thing, and I'm really happy about it. What's the interest rate on these loans? And I know you mentioned it before, but now that we're progressing, what is that interest rate?
Well, okay, they're not loans. Okay, it's a venture capital investment, and what we're doing is and we can't talk about the individual terms.
No, of course, I know that.
But let
Okay,
me-
so then I'm confused then, because I know it's not a grant.
Right, it's not a grant.
Right.
Okay, let me step back.
Yeah.
From the federal government to the municipality of Anchorage, it's an allocation.
Right,
Okay, and they were very specific to say it's
Right.
not a grant.
right.
We don't have to pay it back.
Right,
So-
right. So it is a grant, it's really from the federal government, but I mean to these folks in
Right.
their ventures, it's not a grant.
That is absolutely correct.
Right.
We are making an investment in their company. And so what Joe spends a lot of his time negotiating is, what would be our percent ownership in your company? And so you essentially have to look at a valuation of the company. But our goal is really to get them started.
Right.
And so the way we're setting it up is that we're setting it up as a loan that is convertible to equity.
Well, thank you, because I
That's-
knew it was a loan, but I just got confused when you said that it wasn't, but I knew
Yeah.
that it was a loan. So, but I appreciate the
Yeah,
continued
it's-
explanation.
It's called convertible debt.
Okay.
And if we don't, or is that the right term?
Yeah, that's the right term.
Yeah, okay, so it's called convertible debt. So if they don't pay us back based on a set period of time, then we automatically own an equity position in that company.
Right, but the point is, right now, it's a loan. If they default on that loan, the muni takes over, so to speak.
In general terms, that's
Thanks.
right.
So what's the interest rate, though, on that loan?
Generally speaking,
Can we say that?
we
Yeah,
can say
you
it
can call
because
it whatever you
we have a
want,
template online.
Okay.
And the template online references 8%.
Thank you.
And I would
That's-
prefer to, in a perfect world,
Mhm.
in a perfect world where everything was vanilla, we would use one size fits all. And I really want to use one size fits all, but sometimes different
Just like a
businesses.
mortgage, if you got bad credit, you gotta
Right,
pay higher
different
interest.
businesses have different issues,
Right.
and they have different exit routes too. Some may not generate enough income for us to really succeed in taking that equity position. But as a general rule, we've got it online, the terms are online, it's an example, and then there's all kinds of legends on it.
Right.
This is not it, this is a hypothetical example.
I understand, I just needed
Eight-ish.
this. Yeah, I understand fully.
Absolutely.
What else? How many advisory board members are there?
There are 8.
8?
7,
Yep.
8?
8.
Mhm.
Who's on the board? Do you know it? Can you?
Yeah, I know. Let's see, David McGuire, Rick Newland, Gail Schubert,
Bill Pop.
Bill Pop.
Bill Pop's the chair. We've got, and then Lieutenant Governor Pete Treadwell, Tom McGrath of Frigid North, Ron Pollock of ACDA, and there's one more that escapes me at the moment. Oh, Eleanor Andrews of the Andrews Group.
Oh, yeah.
And just a point of interest for my colleagues, since you mentioned McCunda Control, they're no longer McCunda, I think they were bought out, right?
Yeah.
What's the new company called now?
TCU.
BC,
BDO or something.
BDO, whatever it is, just so you guys know, that's not McCunda anymore, it's BDO. And also, on a side note, our independent financial audit is going out for bid. So as soon as it's, our staff is working on the RFP, so just so everybody realizes that the 5 years is up, and they may well be the successful bidder, we'll see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Steele. Just for clarification, I assume then that everything comes back from these companies, any returns or any payment on, anything that comes back from them goes back into the fund to build the fund. There's no revenue to the city other than property taxes
Oh.
and business taxes.
That is a really good question. And I know that this mayor has committed that anything that comes back under his administration goes right back into small businesses. The next mayor may have a different view of it. The way that the federal allocation works is that once the money goes out, you've met the requirements for or the allocation agreement. When the money comes back, it could be used to, it could go to your general fund. It is completely the choice of really who is ever in power at that time.
Are there some documents that establish that and that the board of directors have to approve, or what is, or it's just merely open to the discretion of the mayor, of whoever the mayor might be?
I'm thinking about that. I mean, the only contractual requirement we have documented is with the feds, and then what I have is the mayor's commitment. And then to the extent, like, let's roll forward, let's say we make $1 million, and the $1 million comes back to the fund. Well, the assembly, you would need to appropriate that receipt of funding coming back in, and so the assembly, I think, would be you would be really the ultimate decision maker.
So in addition to this briefing, at some point, we'll have some kind of annual report or some type of, you will come to the assembly in terms of let us know frequently or annually or something in terms of what's going on with it.
Well, we did a meeting, just an information report, I think about a month ago. And I don't know, how often are we going to do this? Like twice a year, maybe?
Right now, I'm sort of in this investment period where we're trying to get the money out and the money committed, and then we have contracts with everybody we make a investment into to provide us the data back. And then we're getting data back quarterly. So I think that's something to discuss as to what would be the most efficient kind of process, maybe twice annually or once annually, so that we're going to have all these kind of strings into our community. And also then there's some confidentiality type things that we probably need to look at. We can have very high level data that's public.
Mm-hmm.
So
My concern is, are we just facilitating this? Does this show up somewhere on the organizational structure of the community, or, I mean, it seems kind of nebulous out there, and.
Well, it's treated.
Does it show up in our annual reports, or show up in?
It will at
Budget?
the end of 2013. There will be some sort of accounting entries in our CAFR report, which is where you'll see that, because what we'll end up having to show is the actions that were taken on the money. We're still trying to assess whether or not we actually have to show our investments relative to the value.
Yeah.
And we don't really know. We're looking at what other states have done. It's not sure. We're not sure yet how that accounting will work. But the good news is we're not the first one to do this. Okay, but we didn't distribute our investments until 13, so that would be the reason
You
why.
said we were the first one to get it.
Pardon me?
I thought you said we were the first
We're the
municipality.
first city, but all the other states bought it, and so they operate under GASB as well.
Gotcha. So we see money in and money out, in terms of that type of thing.
We'll have shown money going out. I don't think we'll get any money back.
Right.
13.
This is a J curve. It takes a while to put the money out, and then these companies we're investing in are pretty much pre-revenue companies. We're working with them to kind of really bring them to the table and, okay, do you have your private investment ready? Because otherwise we can't put the public funds at risk. And then how long does it take to spin a business up and get them kind of post-break even? A while. And then they have to be able to afford to pay us back.
Yeah. But the thing I was trying to get at is the municipality really, it's really not ours. It's money that came in that we're helping to distribute. The only time that any action or any accountability from the Assembly's point of view would be if we receive something back in.
That's right.
In terms of what happened to that.
That's correct.
Mr. Trainee, Ms. Dombrowski. Just Lucinda, I appreciate this briefing. You said earlier the mayor's made the decision the money will be kept in the fund and not spent for other services. Have you asked the Assembly for their position on the policy question of how the money should be spent that comes back in? Because the Assembly sets policy, not the mayor, he executes it.
Right, and that's a very good point. I should correct my statement and say that that is the mayor's desire. His desire is to continue to support small businesses.
Just if you would, just a side thought is draft up a policy, send it to the assembly for concurrence, because both assembly members come and go, mayors come and go, but I would really like the assembly to adopt it as a policy.
Okay, that's a good idea, then
So other mayors, other assembly members, if a question comes up, well, no, we made that decision years ago, the money comes back in the fund.
It's just an
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
so because it would be, would that be something that you would want the assembly to be involved in? Because we could do an AR.
Yeah, that would be fine.
That way you would ratify.
I'd just like to get the assembly involved in it, so that it's not just a mayor, because mayors come and go. It's not just assembly members, because we come and go, except me, I go around forever. But eventually I'm gone too.
Endeavor.
But I just want it to be a policy, so that we don't have any questions to where the money goes.
Yeah, that's good.
Ms. Dombrowski.
I appreciate this very much. It's actually the second time I've got to hear about it, so it's great to hear. The only thing that surprised me that I didn't catch before is I thought that the funds or the businesses that we were investing in were just here in Anchorage, but it's actually statewide if you're investing in Fairbanks. Is that right?
May I?
Yeah,
So,
no.
so we have some federal rules that we try and navigate, and what we're examining is potentially significant economic benefit to Anchorage. And so, there's a couple things. A lot of the commerce has to come through Anchorage, kind of wherever it exists statewide. And this is a substantial amount of money. We want to keep our options open. So in the case of an investment that would exist potentially outside Anchorage, per our federal agreement, the mayor can certify that that potential exists, and that makes it compliant. And so we look at some kind of joint venture possibilities with local businesses and maybe technology from the university. But we're in early stages.
And I might add too, the mayor, what we have to do is we have to indicate that we believe that the benefit would be mostly in Anchorage, okay? And so even though maybe the thinking and the patenting might come out of Fairbanks, but the starting up of the business and the headquarters of the business would be in Anchorage. And that is how we can look at it and evaluate whether the significant benefit is in Anchorage. And actually, I like that because it does give more opportunity to other cities who in our state didn't get the benefit of this.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank
Gray-Jackson.
you, Mr. Chairman. Just following up, and maybe everybody understands this, but I think it's important to note that we didn't just get a check from the federal government and put it in the bank. The Assembly had to accept it and appropriate it to a fund. So that was our participation in getting this money. And I'm happy that the mayor was willing to say, okay, this is a good thing, and not turn the money away. So, but we accepted it and appropriated it to a fund for this purpose. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for the presentation.